Welcome to SmithWeekly Discussions, an occasional program for our readers and listeners of SmithWeekly Research. Please note this program is a private discussion and everything contained herein is for entertainment and educational purposes only. With that, we hope you're in a comfortable position, along with your favorite beverage, to enjoy the discussion. We remind our audience to examine the show notes attached to each of our shows to better understand how our program functions. Before we get into our discussion, we want to say thanks for questions coming from our audience at SmithWeekly, including Dave V., Jared W., and Mike P. Michael Hopley is on the show today. Michael is Director, President, and CEO of Azarga Metals, a Russia-focused copper-silver explorer advancing the Unkur project in East Russia. The company is listed on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the symbol AZR and also on the U.S. OTC markets under the symbol EUUNF. Michael, thanks for coming on the show.
Good morning, Andrew.
Well, thanks for coming on, Michael. You're probably new for our audience, or at least for most of them. Can you give us a little bit on your background and what you have been doing in this natural resource business?
Sure. I'm a geologist. With many years of experience. I actually graduated with a degree in geology from London University in 1970, so almost 50 years ago. And I have a wide-ranging career, but in the last 20 or 25 years have been associated with a variety of junior companies, particularly based in Vancouver, and have operated exploration projects all over the world, a lot in Latin America and of course North America, and more recently in Africa. The Azarga project, the Unkur project, is my first foray into Russia. So that's an overview of my career. My most recent position was with a company called Sunridge Gold. We had a large project in Eritrea from 2004, and we sold the project to a large Chinese company in 2016. And I became somewhat retired at that point, but have got very enthusiastic about this Unkur project of Azarga, and have come back from retirement to manage the company. So that's the quick, brief history of my background.
And Michael, can you share with us some of the other companies that you were with in those years as well? I understand you were with Bema Gold as well at some point.
I was VP exploration for Bema Gold and some of the associated companies we had, like Arizona Star, from about 1990 to 97. And we were very operational in Chile. We, during that period, discovered and exploited the Refugio project, a large gold copper project in Chile, and the Cerro project as well, which is now one of the largest undeveloped gold copper projects, I should say, in the world. So that was some very good experience. I have been on the board of Azarga Metals and previous companies, European Uranium and Tornigan Gold, since I think about 2002. So I think the longest serving director on the board of this company. So that's my more recent experience.
And what is your take on where we are today in the natural resource business in general? How do you see investor sentiment at this level? And how about appetite to look at projects that have things like copper and silver in them?
Well, as you know, I mean, the resource business is not in good shape from a junior company perspective. Raising money for projects wherever they are is very challenging and has been challenging for a long time. And I don't see too much change in that situation. I think the Azarga project, the Unkur project, the combination of copper and silver is a pretty good combination, particularly in these dire times of difficulty to raise money, because their industrial use and the support they get. You know, copper is often taken as a proxy for world economic activity, and so it has many industrial uses, and silver somewhat likewise. But yes, these are definitely challenging times for junior companies raising money, and it's no secret that Azarga has had trouble raising money for the Unkur project because of the general market malaise, but also the view of the political situation between Russia and the rest of the world hasn't helped that situation. So we acquired the project in 2016, were able to raise money and do the first phase of drilling. And the results were very impressive, although we had difficulty raising money to continue with the project. So there's been somewhat of a lull in the project for the last couple of years. But the recent financing we have through Baker Steel has enabled us to get going again, and that's what I'd like to talk about.
Right. Yeah. And I want to ask you about that in Russia here in just a moment. From an investor perspective, Michael, looking at the broad market still, are there any thoughts or ideas you would tell investors about this market at this point? What's your thought, and how should investors kind of look at this market at this current stage?
Well, I think you know, like in all markets, there's if you look at it differently, there's plenty of opportunities. You know, there's a lot of junior companies out there that actually they're having trouble raising money at the moment and have done for the last handful of years. But many of them, and I'd include Azarga in this, of course, have some really impressive assets that they have not been able to move forward. So as always, I think from an investor point of view, looking for companies with real projects, I mean, projects that really have some upside potential and a solid management team, of course. But that, I think, and certainly if you have patience, can really pay off from an investor point of view. And again, Azarga would fit all those criteria.
Well, let's talk about the company. Give us a little bit on key management. Tell us about the capital structure and also the key shareholder backing.
Right. The company has been around in this form since early or late 2015. The management team, Alex Molyneux is chairman of the company, and Alex is a major shareholder. And Alex has a background of 20 years or so in the industry. I've recently become president and CEO of the company, specifically to manage the current situation with the activity we're doing. We have Blake Steele, as you know, as a director of the company. Vladimir Pakhomov is a Russian director of the company. And recently we have added Dr. Sasha Yakubchuk as VP Exploration. He's a key element to what we're doing. He's a well-known doctor of geology, Russian, lives in London at the moment, and he's very key to our management team and moving this project forward.
And Michael, can you share a little bit about the capital structure and also the shareholder backing? I think you covered some of that, but tell us a bit about the capital structure. You know, maybe cash, shares out, etc.
We have approximately 90 million shares outstanding. Management and board of directors own about 37% of that, so a very high percentage of that. The big thing for Azarga is that since the spring this year, we have a $3 million convertible loan from Baker Steel. Baker Steel is, some of your listeners may have heard that they're a financing house based in London. And they have looked at, as I was saying, from an investor's point of view, looking for junior companies that have projects with big upsides, but have been unable to raise money and advance the projects. So they have given us a $3 million convertible loan that has allowed us to continue exploration. And that, that's based on the fact that this project has a very obvious upside potential and not reflected in the current share price, which is depending on the day, 8 or 9 cents Canadian. And so that $3 million convertible loan is enabling us to move forward to with the object of increasing the size of the project as much as possible.
Okay, and with the convertible loan, at what share price can they convert into shares?
It's convertible at 14 cents, and they have options convertible at 17 cents. So if you do all the math and they exercise all the convertible loan and the warrants, they would own 35% or something like that of the company. So you can see from their point of view, if we're successful in demonstrating that the Unkur project is much bigger than we currently see, then this is a super investment from their point of view. And they are pretty sophisticated people, and they've looked, I know, at a lot of projects worldwide, and this is one of the ones that they have chosen for this kind of investment.
And how about where management is and alignment with shareholders at the current price levels? Now, I know you mentioned there's a pretty substantial management shareholding. Are you guys around this price as far as where you've participated, or higher or lower, or where are you guys at there?
Well, lower than the current share price. I couldn't tell you exactly what the entry price was, but less than the current share price. And although management has also loaned the company money, and that's a convertible loan as well. So that's built into the, or would be built into the ownership level.
And can you tell the audience a little bit how you guys are handling your general and administrative expenses during these kind of nasty market times? What are you guys doing there to kind of keep the capital structure healthy?
Good point, Andrew. I mean, we have really kept the overheads really to a minimum, particularly during this difficult time of having very little money for the last 2 years. We, we don't have flashy offices in Vancouver. In fact, we have a shared office space in Vancouver. Directors are not paid salaries. We've really cut things down to a minimum. I was in Russia recently visiting the project, and everything we have in Russia is shared office space and minimalistic salaries to keeping things bubbling along. But everything is very low overhead for us, and has been for a number of years now. Even with this loan, of course, this is $3 million in the exploration business, especially the size of this project, is not a lot of money. So we've had to cut to the bone to make this work.
Well, yeah, that's certainly good, and I think it reflects a good position, especially in the market times that we're in and the sentiment that's out there. So if possible, Michael, can you warm investors up to Russia? What is the opportunity that you're seeing here, and why should investors risk their capital in Russia?
Well, the world needs copper in all the industrial applications that we know of. And the exploration business has changed, of course, in the last few years, and the source of copper has been and arguably still is large porphyry systems, particular geological type of deposit, particularly in Chile and Latin America. This is where the bulk of the world's copper has come from. But changing exploration views has found that some of the largest undeveloped copper projects in the world happen to be quite different geologically and happen to be sediment hosted deposits. And so Russia happens to host a very large area in the Transbaikal area, northeast Transbaikal area in Siberia, that is becoming known for some very large new deposits that have been discovered. In particular, the Udakan deposit, which is only 30 kilometers away from the Unkur project. I mean, this is the largest copper deposit in Russia, period, and is the third largest undeveloped copper project in the world. So with this and other deposits that have been discovered in this area, a lot of people are turning their attention to this part of Siberia. And actually, you know, Russia has a particular encouraging legal format for encouraging development in Siberia. There's a low royalty rates that the government have and financial incentives for development. So from that point of view, it's actually an ideal place to be operating. It's true that from a political point of view, you know, things with the Western world and Russia are not getting along particularly well at the moment, but that doesn't deter us or make life difficult in any way at all from an operational standpoint. It's like, from my point of view, having operated in all different jurisdictions over the world, Russia is one of the easiest ones to work in from that point of view.
Right. Yeah, I think there's a good point that you brought up there, and you know, we'll see what happens. And there's certainly other jurisdictions I can think of that don't necessarily get along with the West either, but have been proven to be fairly good jurisdictions for mining. So give us a little bit more on the project. Give us an update and tell us too, you know, give us kind of a surroundings. How's the infrastructure nearby the project? Kind of give the audience an overview and then also give us an update on where we are today.
Okay, well, first of all, the project is not in super remote areas you might imagine in Siberia area. It's actually a pleasant 45-minute drive from a town of Nueva, which is a new town purpose-built by the Russians for developing the BAM railway. So it's very close to railway connections. It's close to a local town. When I was there, we stayed in a decent motel, you know, decent food and so on. It's actually, from an infrastructure point of view, it's a pretty straightforward. The project itself, the Unkur project itself, the copper silver mineralization was discovered by the Soviet Geological Survey in the 1950s and 1960s. They were doing countrywide exploration, and they did sampling and trenching and even some limited drilling on the project in the 1960s. There's a very large outcrop of the mineralization in Unkur Creek, which is the first place I went to visit, and that's you know, an obvious location to start from. They estimated from that work that they had something in the order of 143 million tons of good grade copper and good grade silver on the project, which nowadays would equate to something in the order of 2 million tons of copper equivalent. And so we, Azarga, were able to acquire the project in 2016. And through the Baker Steel agreement, convertible loan agreement that I referred to before, and this has enabled us to move the project forward. In 2016, the first money that we raised, we were able to do the first modern exploration on the Unkur property. We did a lot of mapping, trenching, and 4,500 meters of drilling, 16 drill holes. So 16 of the first modern drill holes on the property. And we had some very impressive results. We went into a resource estimate, independent resource estimate, and then a second resource estimate in 2016 with a preliminary economic assessment showing that we've got 62 million tons of ore on the property at an average grade of 0.53% copper and 38 grams per ton of silver. And on a copper equivalent basis, making the copper value enhanced by the value of the silver, that's 558,000 tons of copper equivalent. But in that brief period of exploration in 2016, we managed to drill just a small portion of the property. The strike length of the mineralization as mapped by the Soviets was just less than 3.5 kilometers, was over 5 kilometers, I should say. And we were able to drill only about 3.5 kilometers of that strike. And you'll see in recent news releases, we have the first thing we've done there is run geophysical surveys, magnetic and induced potential surveys, because this mineralization has a distinct signature that we get from the magnetics in particular. So we think the targets now are becoming very obvious to expand the resource with the current financing through Baker Steel. And this money will allow us to drill something in the order of 6,000 meters of drilling. The first hole started yesterday, actually, and we will be drilling all through the winter, which is, by the way, the choice of the drillers. Because of the terrain and the muddy conditions in the summer, the drillers prefer to drill in the winter in this part of Siberia, oddly enough. And so the first results will probably get towards the end of the year, but the drilling program will continue through into March with intermittent results coming from that drilling.
And can you give us what are the plans over the next 2 years? Can you tell us about where you guys are going to go with resource estimation and also, advancement timeline? Can you give us a little bit of information on what the plans are going out a couple of years?
Sure. Really, the big objective is to make the Unkur deposit bigger, much bigger. And so we're doing everything we can and using every dollar we have access to do just that. So the drilling will happen over the next 6 months with results coming out. And I think some very impressive results. My guess is, based on previous drilling results, we'll get some very impressive results from this drilling and show the deposit in the next 6 months or so. We'll show the deposit to be much bigger. By next summer, say the middle of 2020, we expect to be in a position to have an updated resource calculation. We've got other work going on, metallurgical work in particular, that will demonstrate the methods by which the copper and silver will be recovered from the ore. So during 2020 will be a very important year for Azarga and the Unkur project, and I'm hoping in that time we have some very impressive drill results showing that the project is much larger than it currently is, and to have a new independent resource estimate done during that time.
Okay, and is the company looking at other assets, or is this project really going to be the focus going forward?
This project is going to be the focus going forward. Having said that, we are always on the lookout for other projects in a low-key kind of way, because one of the possibilities here is that we end up finding a partner for the project or a buyer for the project that would enable us to follow another project moving forward. But this is our main thing at the moment. But yes, to answer your question, we are always looking at other projects. We especially think that we have an edge on projects in this part of Russia. We have a very talented Russian crew who know this area very well. And so we keep our eye out for other projects, particularly in that area.
Okay, and Michael, can you, for the audience who might not be familiar or maybe is not up to date with the news releases, but has looked at your guys' website, can you outline for us the status of the Kursk Ovah uranium project?
Well, there isn't any status really. I mean, it doesn't exist anymore. Well, the project exists, but we don't have an interest in it anymore. There was a legal ruling in Slovakia. I'm not sure when, a few months, a year ago, maybe 6 months ago, where this was in the court system in Slovakia, and the courts basically supported the government's not renewing the licenses. So there is no interest anymore that we have in that.
Okay, and I think you alluded to it a little while ago. So with the Unkur project, are you guys really looking to build on that discovery, make the deposit larger, advance that in a potential for a buyout, or is it something you guys are looking to advance even further, potentially to a construction decision, or what's your ultimate end goal here?
Well, it's pretty clear that this project is of a scale that it almost certainly won't be Azarga's role to build the project. Our ideal scenario is making the project significantly larger and finding a partner or a buyer for the project that would take the project forward. We've already had some, some interest in that scenario, and that I'm sure will continue. We are out on making sure we're on the radar. The project is on the radar for that kind of thing. We are giving a presentation. Sasha Yakubchuk is giving a presentation at a mining conference next week, actually, in Moscow. So our objective is to make it bigger and find a partner, a substantial financial company with deep pockets that would bring the project into production.
Okay, and would you how about status? When could investors, when you guys finish the drilling program up and expand things, and results come in, how far out on this project are you guys looking at a preliminary economic assessment?
Well, it sort of depends, really. It depends how successful our drilling is. We don't actually have plans for a new PEA at this point, because with our limited amount of dollars at the moment, they're better spent on demonstrating the size of the project. As you know, we did a preliminary economic assessment in 2016 that showed the project to be very economic at that point. But the dollars are better spent, in my view, on showing the size of the project, not doing necessarily more engineering studies. I'm not ruling that out, but at the moment we are focused on size.
Okay, and Michael, what's your opinion on where this is headed? Do you guys see that there is a lot of uncovered potential at this point?
Indeed, we do. The big project in that area, Udakan, is 26.7 million tons of copper, believe it or not. I mean, this is a monstrous deposit. I'm not saying that we're going to get the Unkur project to that kind of level, but we're only at around 500,000 tons of copper at the moment. But if you look at the scale of the geological environment of Udakan and Unkur, they're very similar. I mean, the strike length and the dimensions of the mineralization are in the same scale. So I think that the scales of projects in this part of the world are potentially enormous. So I think we're only, it's a cliche, but we're, seeing the top of the iceberg here, the tip of the iceberg in terms of our exploration efforts. And some of the maps you'll see online, and some of the maps we'll be releasing from our current geophysical survey will demonstrate that the size of the project itself, which is an enormous chunk of ground, by the way. What we're showing that the potential for other areas of mineralization are very extensive on the property.
Well, Michael, why now should investors be looking at Azarga? What would you say to potential investors who are listening?
Well, I'd say this is an ideal opportunity to jump in with both feet. I mean, we have got this money. We've done a geophysical survey, which helps direct our drilling efforts, and we just started drilling. That's an ideal time with a company such as Azarga that has a project with a potential big upside to jump in at these low levels, these 8-9 cent levels, because we will be having drilling results over the next few months, and we'll be demonstrating the size of this project over the next few months. So to me, this would be a very opportune time.
Right, and you guys are probably at a 7-8 million market cap Canadian, so certainly a lower level at this point. Well, Michael,
That's
how
right.
can investors reach out to you and to the company for more information?
My email address, I'm happy to hear from investors. My email address is michael@azargametals, all one word, .com. The website, www, of course, azargametals.com.
Okay. Well, Michael, that sounds good. I appreciate the information, and good luck with progress at Azarga Metals, and thanks for taking the time with us.
All right, Andrew, a pleasure to speak to you.